thank you for joining the 13th and final session of the Steele Benefits Summer Learning Series. We're blessed this morning to have our first repeat guest of the series, and that is Steve Elivas, the Vice President of Marketing for Solaric System. Welcome, Steve.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Wes, for having me.
So, hey, as we get started with Steve this morning, I want to take a second to step back and just kind of recap how we came to be here and what we're doing. Steve, Solaric Systems owns a platform called Benefit Selection, your signature service. And you mind just maybe taking a moment and just explaining what is Solaric, what is Benefit Selection?
Sure. So our founder, Lyle Griffin, actually was who has been a guest on your webinar series as well. He worked. He's a technology genius, and back in the early 2000s, he found an opportunity to kind of, I think he puts it, drag the enrollment process or the benefits world into the new decade or into the new, I guess, the times. And he wanted to take everything from at the time was being done via paper, and his thought was, let's make this easier. Obviously, let's make this online. So over the course of the last few years, we've eventually, Selerix has become an industry leader in really automating the process of benefits administration and allowing employees, employers, brokers, and carriers really to make life easier for all of those entities, and really specifically related to HR managers as well. Those of you on the line who are obviously familiar with the early 2000s, it wasn't exactly automated, nor was it electronic. So not only the process of managing benefits, but even just employees enrolling in benefits was a very manual process. So again, we've kind of made leaps and strides over the decades, and really by listening to our audience, we've developed a software in BenSelect that really makes your life easier and allows you to manage benefits electronically and enroll as well. Over the course of time, we've also added additional products, one of them being ACA compliance as well. But really, I think in a nutshell, that's our passion here at Solaric, and BenSelect is certainly what we've become known for in the industry.
So Steve, as you and I dial the clock back, we had conversations starting about a year and a half ago talking about ways to help improve employee engagement. So Solaris has been a leader with enrollment and administration, has been a great resource to the employer and also to the employee, especially at the point where they enroll, either as a new hire or during a life event or during their open enrollment period. But about a year and a half ago, you started telling me about this coming functionality called Engage, where we were going to be able to virtually engage employees through the year. And I wonder if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about what is Engage and how did that come to be?
Yeah, so I would say if we backed up even more, about 2 or 3 years ago, we kept hearing, maybe even 4 years ago, we kept hearing this term employee engagement. And, a lot of times in our industry, as I'm sure those of you on the line can agree with, you hear these industry terminology and you kind of always ask yourself the question, is this just a fly-by-night thing? Is this a real thing, or is someone just writing an article trying to make a name for themselves? And so obviously over the years, as Wes pointed out, employee engagement has not gone away. It's stuck around. And so to Wes's point, about a year and a half ago, we made the decision, look, based on marketplace research, based on attending HR shows and speaking to folks like you on the line, there's a real need in the industry and a struggle with the ability for employers to connect with their employees. And a lot of times I think there's a little misconception around the term employee engagement in general. When we first started researching this, a lot of it centered on the warm, fuzzy things, the bring your dog to work day, beer Friday, wear shorts to work, Hawaiian Friday. It was very kind of, I don't want to say those things aren't important because we do some of those here at Solaric, but it was a little empty. And so the more we dove into it, really where we wanted to get to was a point where we saw a lot of struggle among HR managers, HR departments, and communication departments in the blocking and tackling and the functional aspect of, I need to get something to an audience and I need to do it effectively. And the current method that most employers were employing was kind of a blanket one-size-fits-all. I'm going to send a message to everyone, and it's probably going to be via email or maybe snail mail, maybe some benefits information on a cardboard. which certainly can be effective, but that's kind of that was the norm. And so we saw the opportunity to move it from a functional manual approach to communication to taking it to a strategic level. And so in that strategic automated approach to communication, that Selerix Engage was born. And again, I think the important thing, to Wes's point, is that this research in the marketplace started quite a while ago. And everything we do here at Selerix is very centered around those of you on the line, the people that are actually going to be using this software. What were the pain points that caused this need to come up in the first place? And how do we design software at every point in the game to actually allow you to make life easier and to start automating some of the things that maybe you're having to do by hand? So yeah, that's really how it came about, and that was kind of brought in the need. We saw the need, and obviously we want to suit the need in the marketplace for our consumers or customers, and so Selerix Engage was born.
And it's interesting, Steve, as Steele talks to the workforce out there, as we talk to employers, one of the things that we talk about is a central premise of the work that we do is an engaged employee is productive and well and loyal to their employer. And so you and I think we're both excited about the trek that engagement and communication was going down. And of course, we have no idea going into 2020 that we were going to be dealing with a pandemic that was going to require employers to communicate to employees in a whole different way. And so that has maybe called some attention to what we were doing in a way that we couldn't have fully expected. And we just happened to be here with a solution that fits the times and really can help an employer strategically into the future. And up to now, Steve, you and I have talked about primarily text messaging and campaign communication. Can you talk a little bit about the point in time communication that we've talked to up to this point before today's session?
Sure. So what Selerix Engage is obviously at its core is a communication tool. And so as Wes mentioned, the existing functionality in Engage allows you as an employer to target your audience. We'll look at that here in a few minutes. But as Wes mentioned, a point in time communication. So I need to get something from point A to point B. That would be from me, the employer, to the employee at a specific point in time. So I'm going to schedule something to go out. Say, it's an announcement, say there's an event, maybe there's something related to COVID. Wes mentioned, obviously, this pandemic has forced us to look and reinvent ways of communicating. I just saw a news article that showed Zoom's stock. If you haven't invested in Zoom, it might be too late now, but has exponentially increased, obviously, because of the times. And so no one anticipated that. But to Wes's point, this new situation we're dealing with has really forced employers to not only step up the level of communication that is being sent, but also the quality and the strategic nature of getting it to the right person at the right time with the right message that's, can be absorbed by that particular employee. I think we can all agree it's by necessity or maybe with a lack of time. Historically, again, we've always sent out these blanket communications that we hope hit the mark with everybody, and we'll send it out at a specific point in time. But we know that that's not necessarily the most strategic or the most effective way to get it out. So all that said, the current existing functionality of Engage allows employers to send out scheduled messages, whether those be texting messages, push notifications, or actually emails. And so the key there is that it's all from a single dashboard. And Wes, I know that in the past, you at Steele Benefits, you guys have always kind of been a little bit ahead of the curve trying to try new things. You were one of our first partners that kind of were putting together different building blocks or different vendors to create that kind of experience of here's some emails, here's a little bit of texting, maybe here's some push notifications. So obviously, Wes, I know I want to get your thoughts on this. When you saw that we kind of rolled all this up into Selerix Engage with a single dashboard, what was your initial impression? What did you think when you saw all this brought together?
It's interesting. Sometimes it's hard to tell how awesome something is just by hearing the words. So kind of the light bulb moment for me when I realized how awesome it was when we started doing some testing of this functionality. And I know you'll get into this, Steve, but when we're able to do personalizations and when I can get text message drips from that somebody set up for me with my name on them that tells me messages that my employer cares about, and just getting that pinged every 3 to 5 days, and just the way that I started to feel when I received those messages and looked at my phone and saw them, that was the moment where I realized that what we've got here is just so much bigger than just getting an employee to go through open enrollment. And maybe, Steve, that's a good segue. You know, for our guests that are on the line right now, we have mostly talked to them about putting out messages at a specific point in time. But the purpose of today's session is to really show how this can be strategic over the longer term and what some of the really robust and awesome functionality is, and how this can begin to become ingrained in a company's corporate culture with how they communicate with employees on an ongoing basis. And rather than me try to explain that with words or ask you a Q&A, Steve, I wonder if you would maybe just show us the tool and give us some ideas of what this can do.
Sure thing. And so what we can do over the next few minutes, what I'd like to do is, I think a good starting point for those of you on the line who maybe have not had the opportunity to see the base or the core functionality of Engage as of today, I'll quickly run through what Engage looks like, and we'll start at a high level. I think it's a lot easier to look at a bird's eye view of what we can do, and then drill down a little bit more into and end up with, here's how you actually create content and how you get this, disseminate the information from point A to point B. So that would be from us, the employer, to those employees on the line. And so one of the things that we're looking at here, and I want to point this out as we look at this performance dashboard within Selerix Engage, one of the most critical things I like to talk about when we show Engage is I actually show what we're leveraging here at Selerix. So as Wes mentioned, obviously Selerix is a software development company. However, we kind of want to walk the walk. So everything we look at here is actually what you see on the screen is our internal Selerix case for Engage. And what I mean by that is this is actually, we have over 100 employees split out between Texas and on the East Coast in South Carolina. And so these are actual metrics of the tool that we're using internally. And I can tell you that it has been a game changer internally at Selerix, but I think it speaks volume to be able to show a piece of software or a tool and actually say, we not only designed this thing, and of course we're offering it through partners like Steele Benefits, but we are actually using this internally. So very quickly at the highest level, we mentioned that Engage connects employers with employees. And so what's important to me as I look at this internally for our own company is I need to know how we're doing. So it's one thing to be able to schedule neat text messages and emails and push notifications, but if we don't have a way to quantify or measure what those are doing over time, then it really is kind of all for naught. So this is a performance dashboard that you're seeing, again, for our own company here internally at Selerix. We take a lot of pride in the fact that we have grades of A's on these particular communication content that we've created. And so as I mentioned, Engage has several different ways to disseminate information. So there's communication channels that include text messaging, push notifications, and email. Again, that's all within the same dashboard. But then we also have the ability to create different types of content. So what you're looking at here are our ratings for campaigns, surveys, messages, and quizzes. And so obviously messages are pretty self-explanatory. We can create, as Wes mentioned, a very personalized, targeted message that not only can target a specific audience, which we'll see here in just a few moments, but actually have placeholders within the message to actually insert things like Wes's name, other things that relate to the specific employee. We have surveys, which for those of you on the line who may be dealing with something like a SurveyMonkey or one of those existing tools, it's nice to know you can actually get rid of that vendor and start using surveys and building those out internally here in Solaric, in Engage. And then you can also do campaigns. The nice thing about campaigns is all a campaign is think of it as a holding container that can contain different types of communication content. So it can contain messages, surveys, and quizzes, and we can schedule things out over time, and it's all topically related. So for example, we'll look at later today a wellness campaign. So we can have messages about promoting proper utilization of medical benefits. We can send a survey of, are you satisfied with your benefits? We can do a quiz to test actual knowledge of those particular benefits among our employees. And we can all roll that up into a campaign that's scheduled over time. So we essentially get to kind of set it and forget it, which Wes, I know you've seen a lot of value in that because we move from a more of a reactive approach to a proactive approach. And Wes, I'm sure you could speak volumes to the struggle sometimes within HR departments of not having time to actually remember to go back and send these one-off communications. It's nice to be able to schedule things out in advance.
Yeah, and I guess to that point, as we have began to use campaigns, an example of a campaign that we're doing is promoting open enrollment dates. And as an employer, you've got to take care in every single communication that goes out to your employees. And if we could provide you with 4 to 6 communications that are pre-written, that have placeholders, that have existing placeholders for enrollment start and end dates, and are already personalized for employee's name, and they're just ready to go and send, and all an employer has to do is schedule the dates that they go out. It's like even just something as small and minute as that in the grand scheme of what this tool does, how much time and effort does that save HR when those things are already ready to roll?
Wes, that's a good point. So as Wes mentioned, what we're looking at here are the very high-level metrics, and Wes mentioned campaigns. If we want, the nice thing about Engage, and this will be the last thing I cover before we actually start to create some content in here, is as we've spoken with HR managers and some of our clients with Engage, the thing they appreciate the most is we mentioned, are these messages resonating? The nice thing about Engage is the ability to actually go in and view specific activity of whether your employees are actually opening this. So we have the high-level metrics of maybe open and click rates, but what HR departments have found particularly useful is the ability to drill down and see on specific days that communications were sent out, or if Wes, my employee, comes into my office and says, I never received that quiz over wellness benefits. The ability to actually drill down and look at on a daily, weekly, monthly level, find that piece of communication that was sent out. And I'm actually showing you here, this is again live data that we use internally. So if I had a question here and say Amy Fields, one of our HR members, was basically said that she never got the message, I could type in, Amy's obviously up there on the screen, but if she was deeper within the list of employees, I could actually type in Amy's name, find Amy, and click on this little view button here. And to Wes's point, now I can actually drill down and look at what was sent to Amy on what date, and I can actually show her that she actually did open this message. So there's a bit of accountability now that we start to transition into, again, helping you from an HR perspective, hold employees accountable, also allow you to get that right message to the right person, and then be able to see if it's resonating, if they're actually opening these things. So it would be one thing if we could just see if someone opened it. The other nice thing is we can actually look at the message that was sent to them. So this is the literal email that was sent to Amy, and we have record of that. I cannot tell you how many HR departments have found that useful. I'll get nice emails back saying, Steve, you saved me a back and forth for a week-long back and forth with an employee because I was able to go into Engage and show this particular employee that she did receive it, and then I could just resend it to her. So that's a huge thing. So again, we had the high-level metrics, and then also the ability to view down at the employee level who actually opened or clicked on it. What I want to do now is actually step back and say, okay, so we've looked at the metrics. We now understand the types of content we can create and the mediums of communication that we can send it out at. Let's actually look at how we build this particular piece of content within Engage. And so for time's sake, what I want to do is actually look at a piece of communication that we've already started here within Engage. And so traditionally what we do, if we wanted to start from scratch, we would just click the add message button, and we'd start to title our message, and it'll actually walk you through step-by-step, kind of in TurboTax fashion, how to actually create a message or a piece of content within Engage. But again, for in the interest of time, I want to actually just run through what that flow looks like. So we start at a high level. I want to send a communication out. This is obviously something we've sent internally here at Selerix. It's very timely for those of you on the line. We had a diversity training campaign that we sent out, and this was one of the messages that was part of it. So I'm going to title the message that I'm going to send out to my employees. I'm going to schedule, obviously, a delivery date. When do I want this to go? I'm going to schedule a delivery time. I'll quickly point out what's really nice about the delivery time is that it has intuitive logic built into it. So it's going to go 1:30 p.m. In their local time. So if I send a 1:30 p.m. it's not going to hit different coasts or different time zones at the same time. So in other words, if I send something at, let's say an early message at 8 a.m. in Texas, it's not going to go at 8 a.m. Obviously, it will go in their local time zone. So it's not going to hit California at 7 a.m. or whatever the difference in time is. So it's actually smart enough to know where that employee is so that everyone gets it consistently at 8 a.m. So that's one thing to point out there. We would give a description here within the actual message so that anyone that comes back and looks at the message would be able to see what the purpose of the message was. One of the most critical things and the most beneficial things about Engage is our ability to build an audience. And so you can see here in this particular case, we want to send the diversity training message out to everyone. But in the instance that we wanted to actually create a more specific audience, when I click audience, I can create a new audience and title it whatever I'd like. So in this case, we'll just say test audience. And so some of the nice pieces of this is that think of the hundreds of data points that you have accessible to you within the Ben Select platform or within your HR platform in general. We have demographic information, we have coverage information, job status, location, job class. There's hundreds and hundreds of data points. And so very quickly, what I want to show is the ability within Engage at the click of a button to filter down and target your message based on certain criteria like specific coverages that employee might be eligible for or actually enrolled in. We could do things like employment status, enrollment status, whether or not they have an email on file. We could also do it based off of age, job class, and so on. One of the other things that I think HR departments find useful is the ability to filter down and target our audience by state. That's a nice one when you have an organization that's spread out across the country and you have different segments of the population split out among different locations. You can actually target either by location or specific states. So that at the click of a button, we're able to start to identify the data points that we want to start to filter down our audience with. And so the next step is we start to just tell the system what specifically within this audience build do we want to target. So just for fun here, we want to target anyone between the age of 25 and 50 who have an email address on file. We want to focus only on active employees. Again, you see all of these data elements here that you can click on. You can select multiple if you'd like. But for the purposes of this audience, we're going to focus on active employees. The nice thing here is we think about if we put our benefits hat on, I want to focus on employees. Maybe we're targeting a pre-enrollment campaign, or maybe during open enrollment, we want to focus on employees who are an incomplete or a not begun status. You can certainly do that. Right now, we'll focus on incomplete. And then as I mentioned before, we can filter down by state. So you start to see the creativity that you can have with the different types of data points and the ability to filter down. Wes, as I pull up this coverage, I think there's probably the opportunity. What kind of benefits have you seen with specifically the ability to drill down into things like coverage? So in this example, we can focus on anyone that was eligible for the Cigna Open Access Plan. We can also conversely say anyone who has maybe waived that particular plan. But in this case, we'll select elected. And as I click OK, Wes, the first time you've run through this, or the first time you're able to experience the audience build, what was your thoughts and what was your take on this?
It's interesting because the potential is almost so robust that you got to get your arms around it. You know, it's going to take some time just to decide with this sort of filterability, what type of audiences make sense for you to create and what type of messaging does it make sense to create. And so the potential is robust and awesome, but it leads to a whole different level of strategic conversation that it was difficult to have before.
It's very true. And to Wes's point, as we look at this particular, the screens, obviously this is everything we're using here at Selerix. We did not get here overnight. So we've been using the software for about a year now. And to Wes's point, this has been an incremental process, not only with the type of content that we've developed, but as Wes mentioned, how strategic we're getting with the audience builds. Every single day you use this platform, you start to think of other ways that you can target different locations, different job classes, different subsets of employees. So it's nice to know that the technology will back you in those efforts, but it is incremental over time, and it gets easier over time. But obviously, it is a lot to digest. As a marketer, selfishly, I look at this and I'm like, this is a marketer's dream, the ability to target specific individuals with relevant information that matters to them. So that really is a critical element here.
So just like one example, Steve, that has come to mind, as we've started to roll this tool out, is I have a couple of customers that have maybe different health plans with different tiered networks, and the ability to, for example, send out a communication that applies to only the people that are on a specific network, or only have a specific plan, or to send a message to only people that have wellness benefits. The functionality potential is huge.
That's a great point. So, it's all about, in marketing or communication in general, it's target. Who's your audience? You always need to be aware of who your audience is. So what Engage, this particular aspect obviously empowers you to tackle that in a seamless way. So just as a recap, we've decided our delivery date, we've decided our delivery time, we've built our audience. Now it's actually getting down into the nitty-gritty of just creating what you want to send. And so one of the nice things about Engage, as we mentioned, is the ability to send multiple types of communication channels from a single dashboard. So the first thing we see here is what we call the message feed. This is otherwise known as a push notification. So Selerix Engage is available as a mobile app. And so anyone who has downloaded the mobile app would get this push notification. The nice thing you see about the screen is that you're able to enter not only the title of your push notification, but the actual message, and see a live preview here on your right. The reason that that's beneficial, whether it's a push notification or a text message, is the ability to start to see if we start creating a novel or write too long of a narrative. One, I think employees are going to zone out. They don't like to read a ton. We know that. But we need to keep it short and sweet, because it's going to look kind of funny if we have a very long message. Wes mentioned earlier, you see here within the text message where we can actually enter the content that's going to be disseminated via text message, this concept of placeholders. And so rather than just saying our leadership team has arranged to do something, it's going to say Steve, it's going to say Wes, it's going to say your employee's name with it, which is huge as far as personalization. We've seen it go a long way internally as far as open rates and click rates. It makes a difference when people see their names. The other nice thing about the feature is, as we scroll down, again, we've already set up a push notification, a text message, and on the very same screen, we can set up very quickly an email. And so as we look at this, you can see that this is an actual email we sent out internally. It's nicely HTML formatted. And the great thing about this is, if you already have content that you are sending out and it's already maybe formatted in HTML, if you click this button right here, and this is just the source button, you can actually copy and paste emails that you've already created, or your marketing department or your communications department has already kind of formatted for you. Copy and paste it, and it would literally look like this, and it's ready to go. Now, if you're not that fancy and we're starting a little bit more basic, you can literally create everything you see on the screen here with our editor. So you can change font sizes, bold, color, make it match your brand. You can insert images, hyperlinks, whatever that might be. So again, to Wes's point, a lot of the use of this is incremental. We can start very basic and be very effective with targeting our audience, creating communication and sending it out, or we can get as fancy as, having HTML formatted templates and things like that. So kind of we all start somewhere, but it's nice to know here at Solaric, we're a perfect example of how this can evolve over time. So we've set all our parameters for our message. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, is how are we going to remind folks about this particular content? And so Engage gives you the ability to set a reminder to go out on a specific date. And so in this case, we want to set a reminder for, let's say, this week at some point. We're going to set that. We're going to set the time. Again, this is intelligent time, so it's going to go in the appropriate 10 o'clock for every time zone. And then the nice thing here is we can choose what criteria will trigger this reminder. So if we really want to focus on clicks, then I only want to send this reminder if someone didn't click the message. They may have opened it, but they didn't click. If we want to focus on opens, we can also click that. If we want to focus on both, in other words, send this reminder on September 5th at 10 a.m. to anyone who has either not opened and or not clicked the actual link. Wes, I'm sure you know, it doesn't always resonate the first time. So the ability to actually create these reminders, I'm sure that has to have some kind of impact as far as use.
Yeah, for sure. It's nice to be able to target a message back and kind of hit them again with it if they didn't read it the first time. We hear that all the time from HR. I know you do too, Steve, as employees don't read their email. So if we can see, all right, who didn't read this, and we can ping them again with the same message, saves everyone some trouble.
So the last thing here that we'll look at within Engage is, again, we looked at the very beginning of this as the performance metrics and the ability to look at how we're performing. The way that we come to that is you have the ability to set goals for each of the types of content that you create. So in this example, we created a message. Let's amp up this goal, and we want to target a 70% open rate. Why this is important is over time, as you start to develop different types of content, you have the ability to track how you're actually performing. And so if we want to start to set goals within the system, we can also set goals for click rate, for example. Excuse me. So now that we've set goals for both open rate, oh my goodness, we have a weather front coming through here in Dallas. So now that we've set a couple goals, we have also the ability to have the requirement to have the employee log in to view this information or not. Traditionally, I think since we want to create the ease of access, we can set this to no, and that's what it's defaulted to. So the employee would not have to log in at all. It's nice to be able to just click on a text message and view the content. That seems to make the most sense. In other situations where we want to actually have them access the employee portal and view maybe benefits information, you can certainly have them log in. And then all of the messages or content that you create, and this is by design, are all disabled to start. And the reason that is as you're creating content, we saw this workflow here. We know we all get very busy, so maybe in the middle of creating an audience or creating the actual email, Wes gets distracted with someone that comes into his office, doesn't get a chance to finish that email, it's kind of half-baked. We certainly would want that to go off. So this message or any content you create within Engage will not go or not be sent until you actually enable it. And so we're going to go ahead and save that one as disabled. So that very quickly is a way that we run down, and that's the way you create content within Engage. And so what I'd like to do now, and really the focus of today's presentation is really to look at taking this communication to the next level. So Wes mentioned it earlier. These are point-in-time communications that we can schedule, whether it be a campaign, a message, a survey, or a quiz. It's obviously very convenient to be able to schedule something to go out on a specific date. But if we think more strategically about this, it seems to make sense that there's a lot of things happening in the system. There's life events being processed. There's new hires. Think of everything you do on a daily basis within the system. So the logical flow or the logical step we took at Selerix was, how do we then start to automate communication like this, what Engage is currently doing, but take it to the next level and allow you to have communications automatically triggered based on things that happen in the system. So from that, I'm going to switch screens here for just a second. We then developed the concept of what we'll call event-driven communication. And so all event-driven communication it's very literal in its title. It is events that happen within the system. We want to be able to communicate something every time that event happens. And so if we think about a couple of specific examples, and Wes, I know you found a lot of value in this, is let's say a post-open enrollment education campaign, and the other example we'll look at is a new child. So someone has a life event, they welcome a newborn into their lives, and those are things that I think currently or communication departments or HR departments are having to kind of create this manual process of sending these one-off communications among the million other things that you have to do within the department. And I don't envy that situation because it takes a lot of remembering, it takes a lot of timing, it takes a lot of, oh, I forgot, or we need to get this out, or did we get this out to this person? And so really our aim with event-driven communication was to take everything we just covered within Selerix Engage and again, automate the process of when these events happen in the system, we want to communicate a campaign, a message, or what have you. So what I want to look at here is the only difference when we're working with event-driven versus the traditional existing functionality in Engage is when we go to create something, we've now added these two different types of communication. And so obviously we would title the campaign, we would title the message, title the survey, but we now have the ability to do an either scheduled, as Wes mentioned earlier, point-in-time communication, or we want it to be centered around something that happens in the system. So once I make that dedication that I want to do something that is based on events in the system, then we can actually look at, and we'll start with the post-enrollment education campaign. This is an example of one that's already been started. And so you'll notice the flow is identical. Nothing really changes. We title our campaign. We have a start and an end date. But the difference here is you'll note this event-driven section appears. And so within event-driven, we can choose from a drop-down list, and this list will continue to expand as the software evolves. But you'll see here a list of things like enrollment complete, life event, job class change, new hire, salary change, termination, transfer. So these are all very terms that are somewhat familiar with everything that you do on a daily basis. So I start to think about this, and it's amazing to think we can now start to automate these communications every time something happens in the system. And so for this particular campaign, we want to choose the enrollment complete. What that does is every time from the first of the year to the end of the year, we have created a floating campaign that occurs every time, and it will be triggered every time an employee completes their enrollment. I want to stress how critical that is, because now we have moved from trying to remember in the manual process of sending something out after an employee enrolled, or maybe sending it out in mass, to the ability to, in real time, the minute an employee finishes enrollment, we now have the ability to reach out and touch them with something, some relevant information. And so the flow from that point in time remains the same within Engage. So for this particular campaign, we're going to focus on active full-time employees who have just completed enrollment. If we want to do a separate audience or really target maybe certain states or locations or job classes, you can certainly do that. But we want to keep this particular example as broad as possible. So we've defined our trigger, we've defined our audience. Maybe we want to add a survey. And so if we go in and we want to actually add a survey that will be triggered every time someone completes enrollment, now we're able to actually see how we add a survey within the realm of this event-driven communication. And so this, I won't go into too much detail about the survey, but what you're seeing here is a survey that's been built out on the system. Obviously, it's asking the employee, how satisfied were you about your benefits package? Did the pre-enrollment communication help you understand your benefits? Whatever the questions might be, you can certainly build them out and Engage and send them out. But the thing I want to point out is when we get down to the actual invitation to take this survey, if we look at this, you'll notice here that there's a delivery date. So when we're doing event-driven communication, if we think about this in terms of a timeline, when an employee completes their open enrollment, we can then schedule pieces of communication to go basically plus amount of days after that. So in this case, we want it to be delivered 1 day after the employee completes their enrollment. If we were to leave it at 0, it would be immediately upon completing their open enrollment, this survey would be triggered. What's really unique about that is the ability to start to time out what you want to happen. So again, if we think about this as a timeline, we can start to stagger communication strategically based on that event that happens in the system. So very quickly, an example is we'll send them an immediate survey to say, what'd you think? Was it beneficial? Did you like your benefits? Did you have any questions on it? Maybe 10 days later, we send them an automated communication that says, don't forget about your wellness benefits. 30 days later, we send them something, and so on. So this ability to actually create a dynamic campaign that sends content to employees that's very targeted and based on a specific event, I think is going to be very useful. And so if we go back to the campaign, and again, this is all centered around an event that happens, and this particular one that we're looking at here is the completion of enrollment. You can start to see we've already created other messages here, and you'll notice this delivered on column. So that's what we just talked about. This is the essential timeline of everything that's going to happen. So 7 days after someone completes enrollment, we're going to send them a maximize your HSA message. 20 days after, we're going to send them a September wellness credit. Don't leave $50 on the table. Go get your health screening and get this credit. Or 14 days later, we'll send them a no-cost immunization message. So Wes, I'll pause there for a second. You know, you've obviously seen the benefit of targeting the audience. Now we're shifting to more of a strategic approach to being able to not only target our audience, but have this automated based on something that happens in the system. I know you and your team work a lot with not only setting up Ben Select and customers, but you see kind of the day-to-day transactions that occur. I mean, how beneficial do you think this is when we're talking about employers that don't have much time and are right now kind of more of a reactive posture?
There is just an ability here when this is well thought out and well designed to create a new level of awesomeness with benefits communication. And I think the the upside here is that for our customers that turn this on and utilize it, it creates the ability to create an employment experience where you have the communication that is really best in the world with how you communicate to your employees. And that is great just in terms of making the employees feel good. And there certainly is some time savings for HR here as well. But just going to the broader goal of, an employee that understands their benefits better is more loyal and productive to their employer. So I think that there's a financial benefit here as well as we get this humming along like it should be working.
It's interesting, Wes, to add to what Wes said, is it's incremental, right? So again, as you start to see and become familiar with Engage, not only in this demo, but when you start to use it, Wes brings up a great point that, as a marketer, I know that brand experience is huge. And so Wes mentioned it, the ability to create a consistent onboarding process, for example. So every time a new hire comes on board, and we can see that here, I'll very quickly show you, let's see if we do a test event-driven, we can actually start to really refine our new hire process. So everything we just looked at, every time a new hire is added into the system, I want to make sure that Wes, our employee, sees our branding, sees our consistency, sees that we care about him, we care about his experience. It's a no-effort way of reaching out and ensuring that his onboarding experience is going well 30 days in, 60 days in, even at 365 days in. Don't forget to schedule your one-on-one with your manager. I mean, the possibilities are endless, but I like Wes's point about creating an experience for the employee. But then I think selfishly, most importantly for HR departments, is saving time and resources. These are things that we're already doing manually one-off, that it's not the most consistent thing we can do, but you also have bigger and better things that you could be working on or probably would love to tackle. So the ability to automate this is huge. Very quickly, I know that we had another example that we could look at here is events that are processed in the system include things like life events. And so as we look at this on the screen, once we choose life event from the event trigger dropdown, you'll see another selection opportunity show up. And so we have things like every time someone has a child in the system, recently got married, divorced, age limit, things like a leave of absence. So this really starts to get your brain kind of turning on, wow, I really do a lot in the system. And the idea that I can actually start to create these communications to go out, again, we can start very basic and just let people know, here are the next steps once you have your new child. Congratulations. And I think this is a perfect example because some of the information that we send out in this particular one, there's FMLA information, there's no cost immunization, and then most importantly, there's the congratulations that we can send 5 days after this event is processed. We can very easily send a push notification, a text message, and a nice little cute email that says, congratulations on the latest addition to your new household. So to Wes's point, I get something like this that's personalized to me as an employee. I feel valued, I feel engaged, I want to work harder, I'm going to come back stronger and more productive. So it's nice to know that those types of things are definitely capable with event-driven. Wes, I know that one of the things that you pointed out is the Selerix holiday campaign. So again, I think one of the things that we like to do here internally at Selerix is ensure that, yeah, there's some serious stuff we need to talk about, but employees love to know when they're off. So our holiday campaign is something that we can just very easily schedule these touch points out in advance. And so you can see here, everything that's listed, these are all messages that we did at one point in time. So the nice time-saving element of this and Engage is I can set all these up one time and they're ready to go for the entire year. So everything you see on here, I can set up a New Year's message, Memorial Day, all the way down to Christmas of 2020. We are now set. And so they're already scheduled to go. And again, same flow. This is the nice thing is that we're very consistent with the interface. So everything you create within Engage looks exactly the same. But you'll notice that these fields are grayed out because this is an active message that's either already been sent or is in the process of being sent out. And then you can see all of the information that we send out. So that in a nutshell is not only Engage, but that is the event-driven communication aspect. Just to add some clarification, so everything we looked at the beginning of the presentation with Engage is all existing functionality that we already have clients that are being onboarded. We have existing clients. I know Wes is working with some of his clients who see a ton of value in this. What the new functionality that's being released this Friday is event-driven, what we just looked at. But aside from event-driven, everything that we looked at, from performance metrics to the ability to send text messages, emails, and push notifications, all of that is existing functionality that customers are absolutely loving within the system as of today.
And to that point, Steve, and just speaking to our guests on the line that have been listening to us at Steele, we up to this moment really have not been talking a lot about the events-driven communication, only because we wanted to see the functionality that was available first and just make sure that we had a comfort level with it on our side. And as I evaluate this tool at Steele, or as we as a team evaluate this, we do that within the scope of our corporate purpose, which is to create prosperity for the workforce. And that has prosperity for us has a mental component to it, it has a physical health component to it, and it has a financial component to it. And what we're seeing here, Steve, I think is going to give us a great tool to achieve our corporate purpose. And just for our guests that are on the line that are looking at this, I also want to share with you that we have already started to create content campaigns that you can plug into. So you, of course, if you do subscribe to this module, you, of course, can create your own content on demand, as we've discussed today. But we're also working on creating modules of different campaign deliveries that you can do as well. That way you can import that in, and if you just want to keep it simpler and you need some ideas of what to send out, we're going to be giving you ideas of what to send in addition to empowering you to deliver your own content as well.
That's a great point. And as the incremental use of Engage increases over time, some of you on the line may already have some very advanced level campaigns or branded experiences, which is fantastic. We certainly have clients that we work with. Wes mentioned the import functionality. The nice thing about Engage is what you're seeing on the screen. If I scroll down to the very bottom, anything you've created, we were very purposeful in not ensuring that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So to Wes's point, they're working on creating templates and campaigns and content. It's nice to know I have the ability to export anything that we create. And again, that could be, from Wes's team, that could be within yourself as an organization, but anything we create, we can export that and then import it back into, say, another campaign, another message, and actually have that content that we created and not have to recreate it over again. Everything carries over, the branding. The only thing that we have to do is obviously redefine our audience and then, update the dates. But I can't tell you, as a marketer and with our existing clients, the amount of time that has saved our clients it's been an absolute godsend so far. So.
Awesome. Steve, at its most basic level, I think about just, we have customers on the line, some of which have 1,000+ employees and hire 100 people every month. And the idea of doing something as simple as even just sending out an invitation that's triggered for a new hire, inviting them to enroll, and then pinging them with continuous reminders if they don't go through the enrollment process, and closing that out when they reach a completed enrollment status. Even just the little simple things like that, as many things that are available have the potential to really move the needle in a big way for our customers.
No one knows how much time is being spent better than those of you on the line. And so the one thing I would pose or challenge you to start thinking about as we wrap this webinar up is the ability, what you're currently doing, what those processes look like, and how much time is being taken, to what Wes just mentioned. How much time are we spending internally as an organization? I don't doubt that every one of us on the line wants to be proactive and strategic. It's the reality of the everyday jobs and interruptions that come in, and it doesn't really allow us to do that. I don't think anyone wakes up and says, I don't want to be proactive. I don't want to schedule these things out in advance. But what I think Engage really does at the end of the day is it makes it easier for you to close that gap. If we can do anything as an organization within our software to make your life easier, and that's why we designed this, that's our goal. That's why we created Selerix Engage, and that's why it's a part of VenSelect. And so, I think that's the key here is go back, think about some of the current things that you're doing, and I guarantee you at some point tomorrow, you're going to process something in the system and then realize I could have automated that with Engage. I could have sent that life event, communication that I just manually sent via Outlook, and then I have to kind of chase down later. All that could be not only sent automatically, but then tracked to where I now have a holding tank for all that communication within Engage. So we're here to make your life easier. Obviously, the folks at Steele are amazing. You're in great hands if you're an existing client. If you're not a client of them, they're one of our biggest and valued clients here at Selerix and our partners that we work with. So hopefully everything we covered today was helpful. And Wes, I sincerely appreciate the opportunity and glad we were able to talk a little bit about Engage and this exciting functionality.
And Steve, one nugget that I want to close with for our customers. Steve and I are assuming that you're all with us on this point, but just in case. So there is a connectivity between the Engage model and the benefit selection, benefit admin module that you already had. So all of the events-based triggers and the time-based triggers and the audience selection and all those types of things, there's really no extra work that you need to do in order to trigger that within the Engage system. So for our customers that turn this module on, all you need to do is continue to manage your benefits in Solarix in the way that you already do. And if we set these campaigns up to run in the background, then what's going to happen is they're just going to run on an automated basis, and they're going to be triggered by activity that you already have in your admin system. Steve, I assume everyone's on the same page with us, but never a bad thing to point that out, right?
No, not at all. I think, there's certainly even opportunity for those of you maybe who are considering the BenSelect platform. There's certainly opportunities. We do offer the tool as a freestanding opportunity as well. But, to Wes's point, the nice ecosystem that's created when you're already a BenSelect client or you're using BenSelect on a daily basis, not only is the event activity there, the data is there as well. So some of our existing clients, I'll use a trucking company that's nationwide. It's one of the biggest that I'm sure all of you have seen their trucks. They were spending hours on a manual process of actually exporting into spreadsheets, things like, coverage records, types of, employees. They were doing all this manually and then sending it via Outlook. Well, if you could imagine sending thousands of emails via Outlook, the amount of out of offices that you would get, it would just bog you down completely. And so that was part of the success story with the trucking company is everything is now integrated. Wes brought up a great point. BenSelect, you live and breathe in BenSelect. Everything is processed in there. It just makes sense to have a communication tool that not only allows you to target every employee you have and different data elements within BenSelect, but if you're doing things actively in the system, the ability to have those communications triggered based on what you're already doing with little to no effort on your part. We really hope, we know it's going to be a game changer, but yeah, it's definitely exciting. Excited for the next few months.
Steve, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us today, and also just the amount of development effort that has gone into a tool like this. And speaking for the folks that Steele works with, I think it's easy to get excited about some of the function that's here, and you definitely are moving the needle with the software and helping our customers be a great place to work. And so we definitely appreciate the work that you do at Selerix. Also for our guests on the line, we've been with us now for 13 weeks, so thank you for hanging in there. We hope that that's been educational. We definitely anticipate doing some sort of learning series again next year, and so I want to thank those of you that stuck with us, and thank our customers as well. And we really truly are in business to serve you and to serve your employees, and to help the workforce again with that mission of being a prosperous workforce. And so thank you for you and your patronage and your business. And Steve, thank you for this tool that you've created that we're able to deliver to our folks.
Our pleasure. Thanks again for having me, Wes. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Goodbye.